Exclamation, everybody, and welcome back to Cube Ramblings. For me, it is Saturday night, November the 1st, 2014. This will be going out on Sunday, as usually. As usually? Wow. I'll get all my past and present tenses wrong here. So yeah, it's been a interesting week as far as things that I've been looking at and things that I've been doing and other goings on. It's been a interesting week as far as things that I've been looking at. I have quite a few news stories here, a couple things I had left over from last week, as well as a few other things I've had just on my list forever and a day. But I want to sort of talk about some of the things that I have been looking at on the side a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the actual topics that I have here. But I've been looking at quite a few, as I've mentioned before, I've been trying to get some indie games. I'm trying to get back to some of the indie games. I've been doing a lot of the AAA games, and the AAA games are good. I will continue to do them. But I feel like the indie games are where I want to be. As far as the channel goes, the AAA is nice for, a break. People want to come by and look at, something that's, I'm not going to say more polished. I'm just going to say something that's different, something that has a high budget. I'll say that much, as opposed to, the shoestring budgets that you normally see of the indie games and the tremendously wonderful things that even come out of those shoestring budgets. But I've been, in prep for trying to come up with, a way to sort of highlight those indie games a little bit better than what I've done. I've been playing a bunch. I've been looking at a few games. I actually, I mentioned it last week, the alpha technology demo of Kingdom Come Deliverance. I just got access to because I was on their Kickstarter, and every Kickstarter backer has access to it now. And I was walking around in that. Excuse me. If my apologies ahead of time. It tis the season for me for sinus problems. So if there's a lot of labored breath and whatnot, I assure you it's everything's okay. It's just you'll probably just have to adjust your speakers a little bit. So I was able to walk around in that. There's apparently a quest in there, just a little test quest where you make a bow, but I couldn't figure out how to trigger that. So I don't know if that's actually there or not. But I was walking around the world. It is quite beautiful what they've got so far. It is very early. It is, there are a lot of the animations aren't quite worked out yet and things of that nature. It is the thing that struck me the most about it was that I was able, as soon as I started into the game and I started walking around, I'm like, oh, my character has a shadow that actually makes sense, and the shadow moves around with me, and oh, I can look down and see my character's body and feet and everything, and I can walk through puddles and see, the shoes change and whatnot, and it's the little subtle things like that struck me right away, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. I really hope I can record something of this because I have a feeling that it might be one of those where it's like, okay, Crytek Engine. I don't think it's Crytek Engine. I think it's an Unreal Tournament engine. I think maybe it is in Crytek. I can't remember off the top of my head, but hopefully it's not one of the ones that I can't record because as soon as I hit record, the frame rate tanks. But we'll see. I'm going to keep my eye on it, and hopefully I can do some good things with that. But it was very beautiful game. I can see where they're going with it. If they can flesh it out as much as they say they're going to flesh it out, then it's going to be, I think, really, really cool. In addition to that, I picked up a game called 3030 Death War, which apparently is an older game. It was done... you know what? I'm not even going to say what year because I'm probably going to say the wrong year. But it was an older game that's been sort of re-released and sort of updated for more modern systems as far as the graphics and whatnot. And I had never heard of it before. I actually ran across it in an article. I think it was on Rock Paper Shotgun. I ran across an article there. They've been running recently some articles like, "Have you ever played this?" or "Have you ever played that?" And it reminded me of a lot of things that I had played in the past that I'd forgotten about. But it also has a lot of good, like, interesting things I'd never heard of, or things that I did hear of, but never really understood what the game was about because I didn't really dig into it at the time. So, I picked this up. I was just taking a really quick look at it. It's interesting, and it's I have to play it a little bit more and try to really wrap my brain around it, because it's like the best way I can describe it. It's like Privateer, Wing Commander Privateer, only it's 2D top down. Although you do have some side scrolling in it. When you go onto a station, you'll go into, like, the side on view, and it's pretty much galactic trading and fighting and all that stuff. But I haven't gotten too far into it. I got maybe a 5-10 minutes into it, and then not much further than that. So I don't quite understand it all yet. Something I'm looking at. Hopefully these things that I'm talking about will appear in a video. They might all appear in the same video, but they'll appear in some kind of video. I've been sort of fleshing out in my brain what I want to do in terms of getting a little bit more, getting a lot of these games that I've been playing offline or playing off camera back on camera. As I've mentioned numerous times, in order to get into the side quest series, I have to at least get, in my brain, half an hour of gameplay footage in. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like I did enough there. However, as I've mentioned, a lot of these games I've looked at are so early on in their development that you really can't get that much time into them. Or you can, but it takes several hours to get that much time into them, to get enough content in them to warrant a video where you can actually talk about the game and see what it has in store for it. Some of them are very slow burners. Some of them are not really burners at all. You have to kind of figure out what you're going to do. So I'm coming up with a format in which I can show some of those off and give links to them, even in the early states that they're in, because otherwise, I was looking through my Kickstarter stuff that I've backed. You can look on your account and see all the things that you've backed, and I realized that of all the Kickstarters I've backed, only one of them has been fully released yet, and that was Ethereum. All the rest are in some form of alpha development or beta development. And Murphy's Law being what it is, they will probably all be released at almost the exact same time, and I will be completely unable to cover them. So I'm hoping that I can sort of stem a little bit of that tide early and go, all right, here's what we're going to do here. here's what I've been looking at. Here's what I've been seeing. So that is in the works. Also, it is a brand new month, so there will be a state of the channel video at some point. I was thinking of having it tomorrow, but in case you guys didn't notice, I ran out of Deus Ex Human Revolution videos, which is why you didn't see any today, Saturday, because of, I ran out of time. I ran out of, I tweeted out earlier in the week that my time was going to be kind of weird this week because of work obligations, and it was. I lost a pretty much an entire night of trying to, where I would have recorded those things. So that's why Deus Ex did not end up going out this week, did not end up going out on Saturday. I'm hoping right after I record this and render it that I'll be able to get a couple episodes of that recorded. It's going to be a late night. We're already pushing like 10:30 my time right now, so it will probably end up recording that well into maybe 2 a.m. and hopefully still stay awake enough that it won't sound like I'm like I'm fading fast while recording those videos. We'll see. Oftentimes I say this stuff and then I get done recording this, and this is usually an hour recording, 55 minutes or so, and I'll get to the end of this and I'll start editing and stuff, and I'll sit back for a minute and go, I am way too wiped out. I was going to say way too wasted, but that's not the case. I am way too wiped out to do any more recordings, and then I end up not doing any. So hopefully that will not be the case this time around. Otherwise, I suspect I might not be able to get one out on Monday, but we'll see. I'll have to do some recording on Sunday, which I don't generally do. I generally try to get some of my editing done on Sundays. That's usually my day where I just get as much editing as I can, and then get it ready for the week, so that during the week I don't have to do as much editing. I can just focus on the recording aspect of things, and that almost never works out either. I'm almost always doing both at the same time. So it's an interesting thing. I was looking at my channel, trying to collect some of the statistics to spout off in the next channel update, and I realized that I have more series going on than most full-time YouTubers that I follow have going on. So that's kind of bad and kind of weird. Well, I guess it's good and bad. It's good in that, the viewers have multiple things that they can look at. And you are very, very discerning viewers, because there are a couple series that I have that no one watches, which is fine. I do this for fun. I don't necessarily do it for the views. I don't need to do it for the views because I don't monetize anything, so it's kind of makes it a lot nicer for me. But saying all that, I do feel like at times I am juggling a little too many things. I know that in particular, when I think about my Minecraft stuff, I don't nearly put enough time into Minecraft as I need to in order to make really good videos. And that's a problem. Also, along the same lines is the opposite end of the spectrum, where I have so many things going right now that are longer running series, like Deus Ex Human Revolution. I'm sure I've got a lot more left of that. I mean, I can't imagine that not being less than 30 episodes. It's probably going to be in the 30s, probably at the end of the day. The Last Templar, I have no idea how much more of that I have left. That's a longer game than I thought it would be, based upon what I had read, but also, I'm basing that entirely on the amount of collectibles that I've found. So it's entirely possible I've missed a lot along the way, but just based on the number of collectibles I found, I'm not even halfway through the game. So that's interesting. Although it's a fun game, so I'm okay to keep playing it. It does make for a lot of episodes, and that time slot is taken up by that. Similarly with Divinity Original Sin, that one is I'm still playing that on live streams. I'm still continuing on with that. I probably am, I would say, possibly a quarter of the way through that game, because it sounds like that there's 3 areas. There's 3 areas that I've seen. There's Sicil, and then there's Silver Glen, and then there is some wintry thing, which I forget the name of it. I think it's like Hob Garden or something. Some Hiberheim, that's what it was. Which I think is the wintry place, because I just briefly jumped into that when I went after a wishing well. So if that's the case, well then, if that's the case, then if there's 3 areas, and I'm probably a third of the way through the game now, kind of, almost, because I haven't quite finished up all the quests even in Seal, but I've been making lots of progress finally, so I'm feeling good about that. And as far as YouTube is concerned, you guys are still on session 4 of my play session number 4 for me, and I just recorded on Friday play session number 10, I believe. So there's still a lot of recording in there. Still a lot of footage to go through. It sort of begs the question, and this is a question I'll pose again in my update video, but I figure I might as well, prime the pipes here. But it begs the question of whether or not you guys prefer seeing heavily edited footage from my live stream, or seeing the entire live stream with just some light editing, where, or, at the beginning and at the end when I sign off and when I sign on. I see a lot of the YouTubers that I follow just simply do a dump where they just say, okay, here's a 2-hour and 30-minute video of my play session, and now they might, sometimes I see them chop it in half maybe, or 3/4, where it's like, oh, here's I had a 4-hour live stream, so here's the first hour, and here's the second hour, and here's the third hour, so on and so forth. But I'm kind of curious as to whether or not, what people like more as far as that goes. Because I know Twitch is notoriously terrible at trying to find VODs on, and I haven't honestly been saving the VODs. I have, but I haven't been doing the, you got to highlight your stream in order for it to be saved. I haven't been doing that crap. It was like, why bother? Because I have a recorded session of it, but I figure since it's on YouTube, since it's going to YouTube, I would, edit them down to like 30-minute episodes and put them, 25 to 30-minute episodes, and make it like a true recording would be on YouTube, where I would just, do that kind of editing. But I don't know if that's a thing or not. If people like that, or if they would prefer to see the full unfiltered live stream where I actually interact with the viewers from time to time, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I leave it out there as a question that may or may never get answered. But it will be a question I will pose again in my update video when I talk about some of the schedule things that I'm thinking about, and some of the series ideas I have. So that's I'll leave that for then. Hopefully that video will go out tomorrow, but I'm thinking it's probably not going to go out until maybe Monday or Tuesday. Even then, it's going to be kind of weird, because it's going to be like the third video in the day of those days, if it goes out then. But anyway, I digress. Let's, as usual, I digress. This is not Cube on topic. This is Cube ramblings. Cube on topic. There we go. So I have here some news items, and a lot of it deals with some old retro games. Do I call them retro games if they are games that have been re-released, or are they just re-released old games? I don't know. I'm trying to, because whenever I say retro, I figure, oh, it's going to be in the retro style, quote unquote, or it's a modern game that's that's just a remake of a retro game or something like that. In reality, these are the original games. They've just been re-released, so I don't know if you call them retro or not. But anyway, I digress. 3D Realms had a sort of an announcement that they made, where they said, "Hey, we're alive and we're back." Which, I mean, they've been back for a while. They just sort of, because if I'm not mistaken, wait, was it 3 Realms? No, that was, ID. I was going to say Wolfenstein: The New Order. I don't remember if that was ID. I think that was ID that did that, or id Software, not 3D Realms. But I could be mistaken. But I think 3D Realms has it never quite died. It's been bought by other companies. I don't even remember who owns it anymore. I think it might be Electronic Arts, but I can't remember off the top of my head who owns them now. But might even be Activision. I don't even know. This just shows you the kind of research that I do, ladies and gentlemen. So, anywho, they had an announcement where like, hey, we're back and we're doing stuff, and we're not dead anymore. We're no longer dead. And in celebration of that, they have released the 3D Realms Anthology, which is just a collection of pretty much all of their games. Well, I don't know if it's all their games. It might be just their most successful games. But anyway, it's a crap ton of games that they've released on their website. I'll actually link you to the Rock Paper Shotgun article, which will then link you to their website, because technically I heard of it from there, and really Rock Paper Shotgun should get the should get the credit for that. But in going through the list of the things that have been released, I was reminded of, if you'll remember, many moons ago, I talked about how I got into programming, and that I picked up a book on teaching yourself how to program, and my initial goal was to do game programming, until I learned that it's very, very thankless, and you get paid better being a business programmer than you do as a game programmer. But in my pursuit of learning how to program, there was a book that I picked up that had CDs in it. One of the CDs had a compiler on it, a free Visual C++ compiler, and the other one had a bunch of demo and shareware games to give you inspiration as to what you might want to do. Most of those games were 3D Realms games, or at the time Apogee games, which I guess Apogee was wound up into 3D Realms at some point. I don't know, but a lot of these things that I see on here are like, they were touted as Apogee games. So, and a bunch of the things in this list are things that I actually had on that disc. So I'm familiar with quite a few of these just in their demo form. I not necessarily played the full games. I've always played the demos of them because that's what I had on me. But one of the first ones that jumps out at me is Biomenace. Biomenace is a 2D platformer action game where you were basically it was a very similar looking game to, I would say, to the original Duke Nukem, as well as to the I guess the Mega Man games, sort of, kind of, sort of. It was more it was closer to the Duke Nukem computer games than it was that. It wasn't 3D. It was a 2D game. It was the 2D Duke Nukems, which they also have on here. It was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool game. I remember playing all through the demo of that. Another one I played all through the demo of was Blakestone Aliens of Gold. That, my friends, was a Doom clone, pretty much. Except it did bring more to the table. So it was, a 3D shooter with sprites, but it did have a few extra, gameplay mechanics that you didn't get from Doom. It had all the guns that you would expect to have, but it had also key cards and all that stuff. And I think it also, if I remember correctly, it borrowed the elevator concept from Wolfenstein as being the level ending thing. But I think you also could access terminals and stuff, which you couldn't do in either Wolfenstein or Doom. So I'm pretty sure that was the case. I'm pretty sure you could do that. I'm remembering back many years and I've had many games that that all do something similar. But Blakestone Aliens of Gold was pretty cool. So that's another one. Commander Keen Goodbye Galaxy. That was one that was also on that CD that I have somewhere around here that probably won't even work anymore if I put it in the computer. So yeah, Commander Keen Goodbye Galaxy. That was a 2D platformer. The protagonist of that, it was a little kid who would run around with a helmet on, and he would use his skateboard at times to do things, and he was just protecting the Earth from alien invasions and whatnot. It was a nice cutesy game. It was it was platformy. It was everything you would expect it to be for that time period as far as platformers go. In addition to that, it has Commander Keen Invasion of the Vorticons, which I have never played, so I have no idea. I assume it's pretty much the same thing as Goodbye Galaxy, only different story. There were quite a few Commander Keens, if I remember correctly, with different stories. It was almost episodic, but they were all individual standalone games. So that was kind of cool. Math Rescue, I don't even know, couldn't even tell you. Monster Bash. That sounds vaguely familiar, but it's not ringing a bell in my head as to exactly what that one was. Mystic Towers, however, does ring a bell in my head. If I'm not mistaken, Mystic Towers was you played the part of a wizard, and you were going through a tower, and trying to get to the top of the tower in order to fight the evil wizard and rescue I believe you're trying to rescue a princess of some sort. It was interesting. It was kind of fun. It was kind of cool. I could also be remembering that wrong, because the one that I remember had like a sort of an old man who used to, your character was, an old man, and he would walk around in his wizard robe, and then if, one of the idle animations was him, like, farting and stuff. But I can't remember if that's Mystic Towers or if that was called something else. So it's entirely possible that my brain is just completely making things up right now, or mixing things up in a blender, and I'm just talking about some other game. But that's the first thing that came to my mind when I thought of Mystic Towers. That could be wrong, and probably is wrong. Paganetsu, I have no idea what that is. Monuments of Mars, I've never played. Cosmos Cosmic Adventure, I did play the way back in the day, the demo of that. That was pretty much Commander Keen, only different, just slightly different in its 2D platforming, different story, different world, so on and so forth. Crystal Caves, does not ring a bell. Death Rally does not ring a bell. Alien Carnage sort of rings a bell, but I don't. It's not immediately. I can't really explain that game to you. I don't. It's not enough of a bell that I can articulate it. Hocus Pocus, I remember that game. That was a really cool artwork, really cool art style, 2D platforming game where you were a wizard, and you were collecting a lot of wizard gems. It was basically Super Mario Brothers, only with wizarding and firing projectiles, and you tried to avoid enemies whenever you could, and those kind of things. There weren't turtles that you would stomp on, but it was kind of in the same vein as that. And I remember the art style that was fantastic. Like it blew me away at the time, because everything else, on that disc was, very, all these, pastel-y colors, the reminiscent of sort of the Commodore 64 era, where you got all these, vast, color palettes. And this one, Hocus Pocus, to me was the more realistic looking one of all those. Like the graphics were pretty cheesy, for the early Duke Nukems and all that stuff. But Hocus Pocus, the graphics look really good for their time, and probably still hold up rather well. They're probably a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Blurry, I would guess now, because of the low resolution. They're definitely low res, because it wasn't, there wasn't a 640 by 480 game by any stretch of the imagination, as far as I remember. It was very low res, but it looked fantastic, and I remember playing quite a bit of that, and getting a little bit frustrated with it, because you have to find like keys to doors and stuff, and you had to go around the whole level looking for them, and yeah, I remember that. Major Striker, I vaguely remember. I vaguely remember not playing it, because I looked at it when it was on the CD that I had, and I was like, that's not my type of game. Blakestone Planet Strike. This was the, I don't know, as far as the Blakestone series goes, I don't know if Aliens of Gold came first or if Planet Strike came first. They are sequels to each other, but I don't know which order they go in as far as the storyline goes. But it was basically the same thing as Blakestone Aliens of Gold, as far as I know. I've never actually played that one. Realms of Chaos, again, sort of rings a bell, but I don't. It's not enough that I can describe it. Pharaoh's Tomb, I've never played. Word Rescue, that's another, teaching game. Didn't need that. Secret Agent, I have no idea. I never played that game. Raptor Call of the Shadows. Now, that game I played the hell out of. That is a 2D top-down, I guess nowadays you would call them bullet hell games. And maybe they were called that back then too, but at the time it is basically a bullet hell game, where you scroll, from the bottom of the screen to the top, it's, top down scrolling, I guess, is the screen scrolls from the top down to the bottom, and your ship is at the bottom, and you can fly around. Basically like, all the old school, like 1942 and games of that nature. It was the same as that. This one had a little bit of a story to it. It also had, in between missions, you would go into your hangar and you can upgrade your fighter ship, your fighter ships, and get new ones, and so on and so forth. It was fairly decent. When I was thinking about old games that I wanted to possibly revisit and record on YouTube, that's one of the ones that came up in my mind. Is like, I could go pick up Raptor Call of the Shadows right now, and I think you can pick it up on GOG if I'm not mistaken. You don't necessarily have to pick it up as part of this anthology on 3D Realms site, but yeah, it was one of the ones on my list. The other one on my list, among other things, was called Terminal Velocity, which is also part of this anthology pack. Terminal Velocity is best way I can describe it is Star Fox meets Descent. Right, so it's a 6 Degree of Freedom movement game. It had tunnels and stuff that you could fly through at times. It also had surfaces that you would fly across. It had all flat shaded polygon ships. You controlled your ship from behind, and you would fly around and shoot various enemies and various towers and other things of that nature. It had a little bit of a story to it. It had a bit of a Star Wars-y, trench run-y feel to it as well. It was rather good game for the era. I think the thing that used to blow me away about it when I first looked at it back in the day was the ability to seamlessly move from flying around on terrain to flying into tunnels and coming out the other side. So it was really neat the way they did it, and it, certainly pushed the envelope of what was possible at the time. Although the graphics and stuff will not hold up, as I said, it's all flat shady polygons, but I think the gameplay was still passable. It's not if you're looking for like, hey, here's your objective, and here's your next objective, and here's your next objective, it's kind of there and it's kind of not. It's very open world, so you kind of fly around. Well, it's not open world, but it's very open map. So you fly around the map and you just have to kill things as they appear. You know, it's flying back and forth kind of thing. It's not really. It's a little bit linear, but it's a little bit fluid too. Yeah. Best bet is to find a video of somebody playing it, and you'll see kind of what I mean by that. Wacky Wheels. Ah, yes, this is another game that I played the heck out of. This was a top-down 2D racing game, much like the arcade games that you would think about that were top-down 2D arcade games. Like Indie. What was the one? Indie games. IndyCar was one of them. I don't remember the full name of it, but it was like, yeah, it was Indy cars that were driving around a track and stuff. This one, Wacky Wheels, was pretty much the same thing. It was just a kiddie. It was what's a good analogy for it? I was going to say Mario Kart, but that's not really the same thing, because you do have that concept of being able to screw over the other cars, but mostly it's the track trying to screw you over, right? It's like there's oil slicks on the track and various other things to avoid. So it wasn't like you're dropping turtle shells to hit the other players. It was more like the track was trying to knock you off, that kind of thing. Had a lot of different tracks in it. It was a rather fantastic game, honestly. I do remember it crashing a few times though as I played it, but that's, you know, that was back in my 486 DX2 days. Star Gunner, I don't know what that is. I've never played that game. Shadow Warrior, the original Shadow Warrior, not the remake one that we've seen. I'm sure people who have enjoyed the remake Shadow Warrior would probably enjoy the original in its Duke Nukem 3D-esque glory. Wolfenstein 3D, the original, the one that started it all, that's there. Obviously, I've played a bunch of that. You saw that when I had the nostalgia trip in Wolfenstein: The New Order. I've played quite a few of the levels of that, but never all the way through to the end, except for the first episode. The first episode was the only one I went all the way through the end to of it. Rise of the Triad Dark War. Now, I don't know if that's the original Rise of the Triad. I feel like it is. I feel like the subtitle was the same thing. That the original Rise of the Triad had that subtitle. I'm not sure, or if this is some kind of, you know, second episode of it or whatever. But Rise of the Triad, that is also getting a remake, or had a remake as well. I don't know if was that remake released yet or not. I'm not sure. It's either in development or it's been released already, the remake of that. But that was, again, another Wolfenstein / Duke Nukem game, but it had, ridiculous physics and all kinds of stuff in it. You could bounce around, bounce pads and all that stuff. It was like, I guess it was closer to Quake in some of its mechanics, rocket jumping and all that stuff. But it's a fairly decent game. It does not hold up well to time, and even at the time that I played it, it was kind of not. It was a very long game, and it was kind of boring. But it's an FPS, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just being an FPS is enough. It was, as I recall, balls difficult though, even on the lower difficulty settings. So if you're looking for possibly a challenge as well, that might be right up your alley. And then of course Duke Nukem, the original. Played all the way through the demo of that back in the day. Duke Nukem 2 as well. Played through the demo of that back in the day. And Duke Nukem 3D, played through that entire game at some point in time. I don't think I need to explain the Duke Nukem games. I think we're all pretty much on the same page with that. In addition to that, there is the Duke Nukem Manhattan Project, which was released actually a few years ago. 10 years ago? Maybe? maybe less than that. Maybe it was like 2007, maybe something like that. That was that was sort of the teaser, right? People were looking for Duke Nukem Forever still, which had taken forever to actually come to fruition. And 3D Realms was like, well, we don't have Duke Nukem Forever, so here's Duke Nukem Manhattan Project, which was basically a return to the 2D Duke Nukems, only in the Duke Nukem 3D, I guess, story area. They had the new revised Duke Nukem look and feel, and the audio clips from Duke Nukem 3D and all that stuff. And they just made it a 2D side-scrolling game, just like the original Duke Nukem games. So it wasn't much to write home about. I played the demo of it. It was okay. I mean, again, having played the original games and then played that, it was like, this is pretty much the same thing I've seen before. So not a whole lot of difference there. It was platformy. So, having gone from the Duke Nukem 3D, which was not really platformy, to the Manhattan Project, which was kind of a big jump backwards, I felt like. So that, to each their own. But that is the list of the games in the 3D Realms Anthology pack. I also missed Arctic Adventure, which I have no idea what that game is, but that's also in there. Sorry, Arctic Adventure. I completely forgot about you, as did probably almost everybody. But yeah, I'll leave the link to the Rock Paper Shotgun article that talks about it, and then you can follow the link to the 3D Realms site to pick it up. At the time that I looked at it, which was last week, it was $20, but I think it's increased in price since then. So you might want to take a look at it and see if it's in your price range, and if it's sufficient for you to if it's sufficiently classic for you to pick it up. In addition to all the classic stuff, another Rock Paper Shotgun article here. LucasArts has there are now, I shouldn't say LucasArts has done anything. They've pretty much dispersed at this point. But 6 LucasArts games are now available on GOG for the first time. That they've been available on GOG. I think they've been available elsewhere, possibly, but at least for the first time on GOG, these are out and ready to go. And they are X-Wing Special Edition, TIE Fighter Special Edition, which I believe these two are the remade for Windows editions of those games. Those games were originally DOS-based games, and from what I've read, they're not the CD version that had the audio tracks in it. It was or the voice tracks in it. It's the DOS version remastered for Windows version that came out back in like 97 or something like that. From what I understand, that's the version that is available on GOG. I don't know yet. I haven't actually purchased any of it to tell you if that's the case or not. I can tell you though that there was anyway a huge collection of Star Wars games available on Steam for a whole pack. Like I paid, I think, $100, and there was a ton of Star Wars games in that pack. I don't know if it had these that are in this one or not, because this is not all Star Wars games, but it did have like Supreme Commander, Republic Commando. It did have Supreme Commander as well, but had Republic Commando, which, spoiler, I might record for the YouTubes at some point. And it had, I think, KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, and I believe it had KOTOR 2 in it as well, possibly, and a few others. But back to the GOG thing. So we have X-Wing Special Edition, TIE Fighter Special Edition. They also have Sam and Max Hit the Road, Secret of Monkey Island Special Edition, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, that is KOTOR, and then Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Those are the games available now on GOG that or LucasArts games. So if you're on a nostalgia trip and you want to see what those games are all about, in the Muse engine, some of them were in the Muse engine, some were not. Then you might want to take a look at it. As far as what have I played of those games, the only one I have played on that is TIE Fighter, and the version that I played is not the special edition. I played TIE Fighter on in DOS version off the floppy disks, so I didn't have any digital audio, digital voice, the voiceovers. I had just the text that you had to read, and I still have that. I don't have a floppy drive to load them off of, and I'm pretty sure at this point the floppies probably have lost their magnetism, and I probably wouldn't be able to install it anyway. So I'm actually looking to possibly pick up the TIE Fighter Special Edition, just because I enjoyed that, and I never got to play the X-Wing game either, so I might do that. And I think I've already got, as I said, Knights of the Old Republic as part of the Steam bundle that I bought, that's my thought. I'm thinking maybe the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter ones I might want to pick up, because they're pretty good. They were all flat shaded. Actually, I believe the special edition was not flat shaded polygon ships. I believe they actually had them textured in some shape or form. So it's an improvement in that regard, but the gameplay itself may or may not hold up over time. It is a relatively lengthy game. The story, though, was fantastic from what I remember. So if nothing else, the story probably will hold up. The gameplay, maybe not so much. But yeah, it is what it is. So what else do we have on our list here? So since we're on the retro theme, let's talk about the Internet Archive. I just discovered a little bit earlier that the Internet Archive has, they've been, I know this for a while, they've been trying to not only preserve internet sites, but they're also trying to preserve games. And they have a lot of like ROMs that they've been able to gain permission to preserve. And now, from old systems, like Nintendo and Atari and so on and so forth, they've been trying to preserve a lot of that stuff. They have actually a Let's Play sort of esque video section where people upload videos of the games that they've played through, so that they're always there. You always have that history. You can always go back and see these things when they're no longer able to be played anymore again, which is very cool. Very, very cool. In addition to that, they now have what they're calling the Internet Arcade section, and I just took a look at it a little bit earlier, and they're using what's called the JS MES library, which is basically a very astute and well-versed programmer was able to go through and port MES, which is the background for the MAME multiple arcade machine emulator, able to port that code to JavaScript so that these old arcade games can run in your browser. And I was just taking a look at some of the ones that they have over there. They have quite a few, quite a good selection. It's not a lot of them I've never heard of before, but there are quite a few that I have heard of before. And one of the interesting ones on there, which I actually started playing a little bit of before I started recording, was they actually have Outrun on there. Unfortunately, while it is playable in the browser, the browser does have, like in Chrome particularly, occasionally you will hit some keystrokes that cause you to like do things like, say, bookmark, automatically bookmark the page by accident, because some of those shortcuts have not been overridden by the little window that MAME runs in. In addition to that, I was not getting any audio, and I don't know if that's just a problem on my end or just a problem with that particular title. If they didn't have the audio for that particular title, for whatever reason, I don't know. But I wasn't getting any of that either. for Outrun anyway. So, you know, if you're ever curious as to, you know, when I mention like, oh, this old arcade game that I used to play and all that stuff, if you're ever curious as to like some of these older arcade cabinets and what they looked like, if you didn't, you know, what the games look like, you could probably jump over there. They have quite a good selection of very old games. They have like Star Trek on there, which was the, you know, like a little 3D wireframe Star Trek game. They had Outrun. They had, I believe, Joust was out there. They had Sinistar, and what are a couple other ones that stuck out at me? They had Roller Jammer? Yeah, Roller Jammer was there, and Crystal Cave, not Crystal Cave, Crystal something. I can't. It's not Crystal Caves. It's Crystal Caverns or Crystal something else. I can't remember the name of it right now. They had quite a few things there. They didn't have some of the staples that I would expect, like 1942 and 1943 and Pole Position. I didn't see any of those there. Some of the ones that I would have expected to see. But, you know, again, I guess they can only preserve certain things, and they're probably only preserving the ones that have been completely abandoned, so that they don't get any notices against them and those kinds of things. So yeah, you know, it's pretty cool. You might want to go, you know, just at least, I'll leave a link directly to the page, the Internet Arcade page on the Internet Archive site, and you can just take a look and just, you know, play around on it a little bit. It's not, you know, if you assuming of course you have a browser that can support it, which they do say that they support most browsers, although Firefox apparently runs better than Chrome does as far as that goes. So, which makes sense to me, because Mozilla's been doing a lot to try to cater to getting games to play in like HTML5 enabling themselves. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a little bit better performance there with that, at least in the Firefox browser. So yeah, you go take a look at the link and see if it's you know, take a little stroll down memory lane, if you will. Wow, I have talked for a lot longer than I thought I have, and I still have a ton of things here on my list. So before we part, Crusader No Remorse, since we're on the old school game kick here, I'll leave a link to VG247 talking about this. But Crusader No Remorse is free on Origin on the house for this week, I believe. So it's an old school DOS game that has been remastered, I guess. Well, not remastered, but it's been fixed to work in Windows, I'm sure. It's the Origin on the house stuff is like a monthly thing where you can get free games if you have the Origin service installed on your machine, which, you know, if for no other reason, I would install it just to get the free games, because they have had quite a few free games that were actually decent, like Battlefield 3 and now Crusader No Remorse, which is the original game in this series. Crusader No Regret is the second game in that series. The only reason I know these games at all is because there were advertisements for them during the Wing Commander games, because they were done by Origin. So that's how I know about Crusader No Remorse and Crusader No Regret. They were both isometric shoot 'em up games where you are a special agent that turns rebel and you start blowing shit up. And literally the really bang up thing about these games that make them stand out in your mind, or at least made them stand out back in the day, was that the amount of destructible terrain that there was in there. Like, you could blow out windows, you could blow up all kinds of stuff. There was terminals to sort of hack, kind of. You could do some stealthy things. You could have robots help you, all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. The graphics probably don't hold up well over time. The gameplay probably does hold up rather well. So it's just, might be something you just want to take a look at. And hey, you know what? It's free right now. It's normally $4.99. It's free. You might as well, go over to Origin and pick it up and just take a look at it. Why not? It's not going to hurt any. In addition to that, the Humble Indie Bundle 13 is out. I did not write down the games that are in it, but you go take a look at it. It's pretty cool. Quite a few things in there. But that will do it for this episode of Cube Ramblings. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you next Sunday.